Have you ever noticed how your depth unsettles people? How the more you think, the less you seem to belong? How your silence, your questions, your unwillingness to play along with shallow expectations somehow make others, especially women, pull away, criticize, or misinterpret you? The Danish philosopher Kierkegaard once wrote, "People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought, which they seldom use, but you think." And that's the problem, isn't it? You're not dangerous because you're loud or aggressive. You're dangerous because you're unpredictable. And in a culture where predictability is mistaken for safety, the man who thinks deeply becomes a threat simply by existing. Modern relationships thrive on comfort, not truth, but the intelligent man is allergic to illusions. He sees through the masks. He questions why love often feels like a transaction. He notices the performance in people's eyes, the gap between what they say and what they actually feel. Kierkegaard warned us, the crowd is untruth, and when a man refuses to be swallowed by the crowd, when he chooses solitude, reflection, and meaning, he breaks the very system society depends on to keep people passive and emotionally compliant. And this is why women don't fear intelligent men because of their intellect. They fear them because they can't be contained. Because the intelligent man doesn't rely on flattery to be desired. He doesn't need validation to feel masculine. He doesn't dance for approval just to be chosen. He doesn't chase illusions disguised as romance, but when he does love, he loves with frightening clarity, not for comfort, for revelation. That kind of presence, sharp, discerning, relentlessly honest, is rare. And what is rare is usually rejected before it's ever respected. Kierkegaard wrote often about despair, but he didn't see despair the way most people do. To him, despair was the sickness unto death, a man's failure to realize he is estranged from his true self, and that, more than anything else, is what modern culture fears in men, the possibility that they might wake up, that they might stop being charming and start being conscious. Because once a man becomes conscious, he's no longer seduced by applause or chaos. He no longer needs to be liked. And when a man stops needing to be liked, he becomes free. And when he becomes free, becomes dangerous. Think about it. Why do you so often feel misunderstood? Why does your silence make people uneasy? It's because in today's world, most people draw their identity from being seen. But the intelligent man draws his identity from seeing, and seeing deeply makes others uncomfortable, especially when they're trying to hide. Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." And intelligent men live forwards, but they're always watching, always dissecting, always analyzing the machinery of life, power, love, fear, seduction. So what? It happens when a man is no longer dazzled by the surface. When he stops being enchanted by the games, he becomes unplayable, not because he's cold, but because he's whole. And that wholeness is dangerous in a dating culture, where confusion is currency, where emotional chaos is mistaken for passion. Kierkegaard knew this intimately. He walked away from the only woman he ever loved, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. Because he knew that living authentically meant rejecting the role society expected of him, even if it cost him everything. So listen closely. The more intelligent you become, the more isolated you may feel. That is not failure. It is the cost of awakening. You unsettle people not because you are unkind, but because you are unconditioned. And a man who cannot be conditioned, cannot be controlled. That makes him the greatest threat to any system built on manipulation, including romance. Because the truth is, most people aren't looking for love, they're looking for usefulness. They want you to play a role, provider, protector, performer, puppet, but the intelligent man steps outside of those frames. And when he does, he becomes invisible to those who still live inside them. Kierkegaard called this leap of faith, the courage to step out of roles, systems and expectations, and walk alone. To love truth more than comfort. To choose despair, if despair is honest, over bliss that is fake. Don't. Yes, that leap will cost you. It will strip you, but it will also awaken you. Because once you truly see, you can never unsee. And if your intelligence is rooted not just in information, but in self-awareness, it transforms you. You stop seeking validation and begin seeking God, or meaning, or peace. And that terrifies others, sometimes even yourself, because what comes next is not for the faint of heart. Kierkegaard once wrote, "To dare is to lose one's footing, momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself." And most men have already lost themselves, not because they lack intelligence, but because they've been trained to apologize for it. You were told to soften your words, to dim your insights, to pretend you don't see the cracks, to smile when something's fake, to laugh when something's shallow, to stay silent when something's wrong. You were taught that being agreeable was the same as being accepted, but acceptance that demands the death of your essence isn't acceptance, it's assimilation. And the intelligent man who refuses to assimilate becomes a threat, not just to women, but to everyone who profits from his silence. You scare people not because you're aggressive, but because you're precise. Because when you speak, your words have weight. Because when you look at someone, they don't feel flattered, they feel seen. And being seen is unbearable for those still wearing masks. Most people don't want connection, they want comfort. They want their illusions reinforced. But the intelligent man dismantles illusions wherever he goes, even in love. especially in love, because for him love is not a game, not a power struggle, not a stage for childhood wounds. For the intelligent man, love is truth. And truth doesn't always feel good, it feels real. That's why you face resistance. That's why people misread you. That's why you're met with confusion or even hostility, because your presence threatens the system that rewards performance. You don't beg, you don't chase, you don't explain yourself 10 times just to be understood. You walk away not because you're angry, but because your soul refuses to be auctioned off for convenience. That kind of man, grounded sovereign, is more terrifying than any tyrant, because he doesn't react. He chooses, and choosing, authentically, consciously. That is the greatest rebellion left in this world. So why do intelligent men scare modern women? It's not because women are shallow, it's not because they're malicious. It's because we live in a culture that conditions people to expect performance, not presence. And the intelligent man cannot fake presence. He brings himself fully, not at all, and most people aren't ready for that kind of fullness. It's too raw, too unfiltered, too demanding of self, and most would rather stay comfortably asleep than wake up to their contradictions. Kierkegaard's life embodied this paradox. He loved Regina Olsen deeply, but he left her not because he didn't feel, but because he felt too much, because he knew his path was solitary, that his inner world was too vast, too turbulent to be anchored in someone else. That's the paradox of the intelligent man. He longs for intimacy, but never at the cost of his integrity. He craves connection, but who refuses to perform for it. He would rather walk alone than dilute his essence just to be desired, and that is not arrogance, that is alignment. And that, more than anything, is what terrifies people, because deep down, everyone wants to be chosen, but the intelligent man, he wants to be met. And being met requires the other person to also be whole, to have faced their own shadows, to have unlearned their own illusions, and most aren't ready for that, so they call you cold, distant, difficult. But the truth is you're not cold, you're clear. You don't hate women, you don't hate love. What you resist are illusions. You refuse to call dependency love. You refuse to worship chaos and call it passion. You've seen too much to play blind, and that's what unsettles people. You're not manipulable, you're not predictable, you're not waiting for the world to tell you who to be. Kierkegaard once wrote, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are." And if you're still listening, it's because you want more than the life of despair. You want to know who you are beyond the noise, beyond the roles, beyond the endless craving for approval. On that journey will cost you. It will cost you popularity. It will cost you comfort. It may even cost you love. But what you gain in return is worth more. Selfhood, sovereignty, sanity. You stop searching for someone to complete you because you no longer feel incomplete. And that's when you become truly dangerous, not to others, but to the system that depends on broken men, because the deeper you go, the more everything begins to unravel, especially the lies you were taught about what it means to be a man. Kierkegaard wasn't interested in success as society defines it. He wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all." And that is exactly what has happened to so many men. They've quietly disappeared. Not physically, not loudly, but spiritually. They've lost themselves trying to be palatable, trying to be charming, trying to be whoever the room wanted them to be, until one day they looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. But the intelligent man cannot pretend for long. The tension builds. The dissonance gnaws at him. He starts to notice that what others call confidence is often arrogance, that what they call love is often dependency, that what they call chemistry is often unhealed trauma speaking its native tongue. And once you see, you suffer. That's the price of awareness. Suffering. You suffer because you no longer fit. You suffer because your questions ruin the mood. You suffer because your clarity offends people who prefer comfort. And this is where the Kierkegaardian paradox takes hold. You either betray yourself to be accepted by the world, or you betray the world to remain true to yourself. Most men take the first path. It's easier, it's praised, but it's also a slow death. The intelligent man, if he's brave, takes the second. And in that choice he begins to live, not comfortably, not safely, but honestly. And that honesty shapes everything: how he speaks, how he dates, how he works, how he worships, how he walks away. And the world punishes that kind of man, because a man who cannot be seduced by the crowd becomes a mirror, and most people hate mirrors that don't flatter. Now, let's bring this into relationships. Why does a woman feel uneasy around an intelligent man? Not because he doesn't care, but because he cares differently. He doesn't chase, he observes. He doesn't flatter, he listens. He doesn't react to every emotional cue like a trained dog. He chooses his responses with surgical precision. This makes him mysterious. And mystery terrifies people who crave constant emotional reassurance. The intelligent man isn't absent. He's selectively present. And that selectivity feels like rejection to those used to being worshipped without effort. But he doesn't worship, he discerns. Because when intelligence combines with emotional clarity, it becomes something close to X-rayed vision. He sees through smiles, through games, through flattery, and that kind of sight unnerves anyone still hiding. Kierkegaard spoke of the individual's responsibility to become a self, not a role, not a performer, not a projection. of others' expectations, but a self. And becoming a self requires silence, stillness, reflection for things modern culture is allergic to, because a man who sits in silence too long might stop consuming, he might stop conforming, he might stop apologizing for who he is. And most dangerous of all, he might stop chasing what was never worthy of him in the first place. Want to terrify people? Walk into a room and don't seek attention, just observe. Don't over-explain, speak with precision, set boundaries without raising your voice, be kind without being compliant, be romantic without being dependent. Watch what happens, watch how people adjust themselves in your presence, because deep down, everyone senses when a man is rooted. And most don't know how to handle it, especially when he's not performing. That's the secret of intelligent men, they don't perform. And that's what makes them dangerous. Kierkegaard once said, "Once you label me, you negate me." And the intelligent man cannot be labeled. Is he cold? No, he's composed. Is he arrogant? No, he's self-respecting. Is he aloof? No, he's discerning. But labels are easier than reflection, so the world reduces him to anything that makes his clarity feel less threatening. Don't let that shake you, let it sharpen you. Let it deepen your solitude. Let it fortify your path. You weren't built to be palatable. You weren't made to beg. You weren't designed to be everyone's comfort zone. You were made to become a man in the Kierkegaardian sense, aware, faithful to truth, willing to walk alone if that's what it takes to keep your soul intact. If that's what it takes, then walk into the storm. Kierkegaard warned us. The crowd is untruth, and yet, most men still look to the crowd for validation. They measure their worth by applause, by how many smiles they spark, by how many hearts they win. But that applause is a trap. It teaches you to shape yourself around what pleases others, not around what's real within you. Here's the truth, no one told you the more intelligent you become, the less applause you will receive. Because you're no longer playing for the crowd, you're playing for your soul. And most people don't clap for that. They stare, they question, they shrink. You scare people, not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. In a culture built on noise, your silence is disturbing. In a world addicted to stimulation, your stillness is unsettling. In an age of constant availability, your refusal to be summoned on command feels like rebellion. And it is. It's the rebellion of a man who has reclaimed his mind, his heart, and his attention. You don't owe anyone a reaction. You don't owe anyone your confusion. The intelligent man doesn't waste time explaining himself to people committed to misunderstanding him. Have you noticed how uncomfortable people get when you stop oversharing, when you start guarding your thoughts, when your eyes say more than your words? That's the energy of a man who has stopped trying to be understood by everyone, and that man terrifies not just women but society at large, because society thrives when men are distracted, addicted, chasing. But the intelligent man doesn't chase, he chooses, and this choosing, the calm, deliberate choices of a man who knows his worth, make him unreadable, unplayable, untouchable. Kierkegaard called this the single individual, the man who separates himself from the crowd, not in arrogance but in authenticity. He walks alone, not because he hates people but because most paths lead to noise, and he wants truth, he wants depth, he wants God however he understands him. And here's the paradox. The more rooted you become in yourself, the more people will try to shake you, not because you're wrong but because you remind them of what they abandoned: their depth, their integrity, their silence. And in love, this becomes even more profound, because the intelligent man doesn't romanticize chaos. He doesn't confuse unpredictability with passion. He's drawn to alignment, not excitement, to peace, not performance. And when he speaks of love, he speaks of something sacred, not superficial. That kind of present, steady, unwavering, to be terrifying to someone who has only known love as drama. It may feel cold, but it isn't. It's steady, and steadiness is unfamiliar to those addicted to emotional turbulence. But you must not shrink. You must not dim your clarity to be more acceptable. You must not hide your intelligence to seem less intimidating. Your role is not to fit into the world's confusion. Your role is to stay anchored in truth, and sometimes truth walks alone. Kierkegaard lived in solitude, but not in despair. His pain became philosophy. His questions became fire. His writings became a map for men like you, men who feel too much, think too deeply, and refuse to perform just to be accepted. So let's bring it back to you. If you're misunderstood, good. If you're feared, good. If you're labeled cold, distant, arrogant, good. That means you've stopped being digestible. You've stopped living on the surface. You've started to matter. Because the world doesn't need more nice guys. It doesn't need more charm. It doesn't need more puppets. It needs men. Real men. Men who know who they are. Men who walk in silence. Men who love without losing themselves. Men who speak when it matters and disappear when it doesn't. Men so rooted in truth that nothing, not even love, can make them abandon it. And if you're becoming that kind of man, know this: you won't be for everyone. But to the rare few who can see you, you'll be unforgettable. You won't be worshipped by the crowd, but you'll be respected by the rare. And most importantly, you'll respect yourself. In the quiet moments, in the hard choices, in the nights where you choose peace over performance, truth over approval, solitude over shallow comfort. This is what it means to be dangerous in the best way possible. So stop apologizing for your solitude. Stop doubting the strength of your vision. You are not too much. You are simply too real for a world that rewards imitation. And yes, the more real you become, the lonelier it may feel, but the stronger you will be, because your power won't come from charm, wealth, or image. It will come from your refusal to abandon yourself. Think of how far you've already come. And don't stop now, because on the other side of this path, one paved with clarity, solitude, and self-mastery, there is not just strength, there is freedom. Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." And he was right, because when a man stops outsourcing his identity, when he no longer begs for permission to be himself, he's struck with a terrifying realization. There is no map. There is no applause. There is no one to reassure him he's on the right track. There is only him, his God, and the abyss between them. That is why intelligent men scare the world, because they walk into the abyss with their eyes open. They don't hide behind distractions. They don't drown themselves in endless entertainment. They don't overstuff their schedules just to avoid silence. They sit in it. They endure the unease. They face the questions most men never dare to ask. Who am I without my work? Who am I without validation? Who am I without someone clinging to me for stability? Most men run from these questions, but the intelligent man builds his home inside them, and when he meets a woman, he doesn't try to possess her. He doesn't want to fix her, control her, or impress her. He simply wants to see her, and that kind of seeing is rare. It pierces through vanity, through ego, through performance. It demands presence. It demands truth. And truth is a fire most people fear because it doesn't flatter. It doesn't negotiate. It just is. An intelligent man, grounded in truth, becomes unshakable. He can't be seduced by charm nor destroyed by rejection. He isn't cold. He isn't harsh. He is whole. So if you want to understand why you're avoided, misread, even villainized, it's simple. It's because you stopped chasing shadows. And once you stop chasing shadows, those who live in them feel exposed. Your presence becomes judgment even when you say nothing. Your standards become offensive even when you don't impose them. You've become a mirror. And most people hate mirrors that don't flatter. But your role is not to flatter. It's to reflect what's real first within yourself, then around you. Kierkegaard spoke of the knight of faith, a man who lives inwardly before he lives outwardly, not guided only by logic, not ruled only by emotion, but led by something deeper, something that cannot be explained to the masses. The knight of faith walks unnoticed. He's not loud. He's not chasing titles. He may not even look successful by the world's standards, but inside him burns a light that cannot be dimmed by trends, by rejection, or by loneliness. And that's the man you're becoming, not a man desperate to find an identity, a man who embodies one. Let's be honest, it isn't easy. You'll lose people. You'll question yourself. You'll face nights where the silence feels like a scream. You'll wonder if something's wrong with you because the old thrills no longer excite you. You'll walk away from relationships that once felt like home only, to realize they were houses built on sand. But you'll also gain something new, something steadier, a strange peace, a stillness in your soul that doesn't come from being liked but from being right with yourself. And that peace, that alignment, that deep integrity, that is worth everything you've lost. So no, you are not too quiet. You are not too intense. You are not too deep. You are becoming whole, and in a fragmented world. Wholeness is terrifying because wholeness cannot be manipulated, it cannot be seduced, it cannot be purchased, and it cannot be ignored. You are not broken. You are becoming. And what you're becoming is exactly what this world both desperately needs and deeply fears. A man who cannot be moved by lies, not even the ones he used to tell himself. Kierkegaard believed that every man, deep in his soul, is called to become something more, not more in status, not more in fame, but more in truth. He wrote, "What I really lack is to be clear in my mind, what I am to do, not what I must know." And that's the essence of your transformation. It's not about knowing more, it's about becoming more. Becoming what man no longer defined by reactions, no longer defined by expectations, no longer defined by fleeting desires, but by the eternal commitment to becoming whole no matter the cost. By now, you've already felt the weight of this path, the ache of solitude, the sting of being misunderstood, the fatigue of being the only one in the room who sees clearly while everyone else plays blind. But here's the truth. Most won't tell you that pain is sacred, that loneliness, it isn't your enemy, it's your training ground. Because once you learn to walk alone, once you learn to sit in silence, once you learn to observe without reacting, to love without losing yourself, then, and only then, do you become untouchable. The intelligent man, who embraces Kierkegaard's truths, doesn't fear rejection because he no longer lives to be chosen. He has chosen himself, and that changes everything. It changes how you love. You stop looking for someone to fill your silence and start seeking someone who respects it. It changes how you work. You stop performing for a paycheck and start creating from your essence. It changes how you live because you're no longer escaping, you're aligned. And alignment makes you rare, not better rare, because you dared to face what most men never will, the unbearable light of your own potential. Most men run from it, they settle, they shrink, they conform. But you followed the whisper, through the fog, through heartbreak, through ridicule. And here you are, not finished, not flawless, but free. And that freedom, though quiet, is louder than any performance ever could be. You've learned to walk away when something insults your soul. You've learned to say no, not to hurt, but to protect. You've learned that peace isn't found in presence of others, but in the absence of self-betrayal. You've learned that love is not a transaction, it's a mirror, and the woman worthy of your depth won't be the one who flatters your surface. She'll be the one who sees your silence and stays. Maybe she'll come, maybe she won't, but either way, you won't wait in desperation. You'll walk your path alone if you must whole. Either way, Kierkegaard's life proves this. He left the love of his life, not because he didn't feel, but because he felt too much, because he knew his truth could not coexist with the roles others wanted him to play. And that's your challenge now. Will you keep playing roles for comfort, or will you finally become the man you were meant to be, even if it means being feared, rejected, or alone? Because the intelligent man doesn't seek to be liked. He seeks to be aligned, and when you're aligned, the right people recognize you, not because you impress them, but because your silence awakens something they forgot they had within themselves. So don't dim yourself, don't apologize for your solitude, don't betray your vision. You are not too much. You are simply real, and in a world addicted to illusion, real is unforgettable.